Let's take a breath together. I'm still feeling the shock, the surprise, the sadness uh, of the news about Sandy, and I'm sure you all are also. And I was thinking about what would have been a good time to make the announcement, and there isn't a good time. I did it before the musicians were announced because he loved the music and the musicians, and he had talked to me about that before. And I also wanted us to just embrace him as part of our family because he was part of our family, and we are all family here. And so we just continue to breathe and continue to embrace transition, which is what we've been doing so much of, and we continue to do that. This month, we've been talking about expectancy, the key to joy, and using Ernest Holmes' definition of expectancy, his definition of joy, and that is joy being the emotion that's excited by the expectancy of good. Joy being the emotion excited by the expectancy of good. And so this morning we are just allowing our hearts to open to experience joy and expectancy of good in our lives. We've been talking about expectancy being the big and, because it's always more when we're dealing with expectancy. We're always looking for more. We're always being open to more. We're always being available to more. And that's what the big and is all about. It's always, thank you, God, and because the cattle on 1,000 hills belong to me. All that the Father hath is mine, which is a big and. If I don't have it all now, then there's a big and. There's more to expect. There's more coming. There's more for me, and all I need be is available to it. And so let's breathe, because we keep moving into that place of the big and we can only experience it to the degree that we can receive it, and we can only receive it to the degree that we can breathe and open up and open our hearts. And so that's what we're doing here this morning, continuing to just open up and open our hearts. The topic this morning is the joy in forgiveness. The joy in forgiveness. The joy in forgiveness. And if joy is the emotion excited by the expectancy of good, forgiveness is also an expectancy of good, because there is good that comes as a result of forgiveness. There's good that we experience in forgiveness. We experience freedom. Freedom from a closed heart, freedom from resentment, freedom from judgment, freedom from blame, freedom from all that stuff that we hold on to. We experience peace of mind. We experience peace in our lives. We experience open-heartedness. This is the expectancy of good that we get from forgiveness as a result of practicing forgiveness. And so forgiveness is also a big and, because we can't ever do enough. I don't care how much you forgive, there's always more to do. There's always more forgiveness. If you're living and breathing in a body on this planet, there's always more forgiveness to do, because there are other people who are living and moving and breathing in their bodies on this planet, and we interact with each other. And as a result, there's always something, some rub, some conflict that comes up, something that happens that we hold on to, that we grasp, that gets our attention. Something gets our attention, and we're off in that direction, whatever it is. Whether or not the other person was right or wrong, whether we were right or wrong, usually we're right. Right? Usually we're right, the other person was wrong. So we get caught up in that, and we go tracing after that. And then we forget all about expectancy of good. We forget all about forgiveness. We forget all about open-heartedness. We forget all about all that stuff we learn when we come here on Sundays or when we're in classes or whatever, because we get caught up in the world. And when we get caught up, then we forget, and that's when we don't get to experience joy in our lives. When we get caught up in expectations, we don't get to experience joy because expectations bring on disappointment. So we aren't talking about expectations when we're talking about expectancy, you know. We're just talking about openness and not having some preconceived idea of what we want or how we want things to be or how we want people to be. And so that's how we get to thinking about forgiveness and the continual practice of forgiveness. Ernest Holmes says that forgiveness must be a continual practice, else we must practice, let me say it again. There must be a continual practice of forgiveness, else there will be a continual practice of unforgiveness. Now that's what he said. There must be a continual practice of forgiveness, else there will be a continual practice of unforgiveness. So it's either or. You're either practicing forgiveness or you're practicing unforgiveness. Because it's a dynamic thing. It's ever living. It's so long as we're living, it's ever growing. It's ever available to us. Forgiveness is. And so I'm inviting you to just focus on forgiveness right now, because at the end of the year, this last Sunday in the year, as we look back on our lives, as we look back on our community, as we look back on what happened in this past year, I bet we can think of something that we need to forgive, or someone that we need to forgive, or some way, or for some reason that we need to practice forgiveness. And I'll give you a chance to think about it today. Just thinking about practicing forgiveness, releasing and letting go of whatever we're holding on to. Releasing and letting go of judgment, releasing and letting go of resentment, releasing and letting go of anger, releasing and letting go of fear, because that gets caught up in there too. Releasing and letting go of guilt and shame and blame and all that stuff that we hold on to. All that stuff that separates us. You know, the only thing that ever needs to be healed is our sense of separation from God. And when we are feeling separate from each other, we are feeling separate from God. Because God is our very life. God is the life of each one of us. And God is in the midst of everything for each one of us. God is in the midst of each of us. And so when we're feeling separate from each other, we're feeling separate from God also. And when we are involved in conflict, and when we are involved in holding on to stuff that closes our hearts, that closes us off from each other, we're closed off from God. And that's where our healing comes from. Our need for healing comes from, that being closed off, that feeling closed off. And so I'm inviting you to just take a breath and open up and just think about the things that can create a need for forgiveness. Things that can create a need for forgiveness. And that's just many of them, but just thinking about 3 things that I'm thinking of right now, just for our community. Change is number 1. Change creates a need for forgiveness because most of us resist change. We don't like it one bit. We want things to be the way they were. We want people to stay the way they were. We want things the way we want them. But change happens. Change is constant. Change is constantly happening. And as things change and we resist, we get into a place where we hold on. We get angry, we get resentful, we get judgmental, we blame, we do all kinds of things, and it closes us off. And so when you think about all the changes that have happened here in our community this year, all the transitions that we've gone through and that we continue to go through as a community, let's take a breath. That's a big need for forgiveness. That can be a big need for forgiveness here. So if you've thought about things that you didn't like, or people that you didn't like, or situations that you didn't like, or circumstances that you didn't like, and you just tolerated it anyway, and you're still holding on to that, there's a need for forgiveness there. There's a need to just take a breath and just let it go. Take a breath and release it. Take a breath and do whatever is necessary to just let it go, let it dissolve into the nothingness from whence it came so that you can move on in your life. And that's whether we're dealing with people or situations or circumstances or something from the past or whatever. But at the end of the year, I'm inviting you to just think back over the things that have happened, the things that have changed in your life, the things that have changed in our community, the people who have changed, the ways that we have changed, that we need to release, and we need to let go, and we need to open up, and we need to embrace that change that we've been talking about all year. And so just thinking about change being one of the things that creates a need for forgiveness, I want you to just kind of keep that in mind as you think about the second thing that creates a need for forgiveness: family. I did get an amen back there. Family. We just came off the holiday season. Oh, well, we're still in it. You know, we're just coming off the Thanksgiving. That's when it starts. Thanksgiving. And then we roll on into Christmas. And now we're coming to the end of the year. And there's nothing like family that can make us have to practice forgiveness, honestly. Getting together with family, all the old stuff that comes up. When we get together with family and we go back into those old positions that we used to hold as kids, with our parents even, with our siblings, with our children, with our spouses, whatever the case may be. But when our family of origin gets together, or when sometimes we don't have to get together with them, we can just start thinking about them. We can start thinking about situations and start thinking about circumstances and remembering what the Thanksgiving dinner was like, or what the Christmas day was like, or what Christmas holidays. And yet, that's the time of year that we want to flock to family. That's the time of year that we get together with family. We kind of know what it's going to be like. And sometimes if we have a spiritual life coach or a therapist, we see them long in advance before we go to deal with family, and then we see them long after we come back. You know, some of you know what I'm talking about. And yet, you know, that's what we do. That's what we do at this time of year. We get together with our families. And so family creates that need for forgiveness, and it creates a need for us just to open our hearts and breathe and practice forgiveness. Practice forgiveness, because they are who they are. You are who you are. We are who we are. And some things don't change, and yet we come together again, and then, you know, we go through this little dance with them every year. And so what we want to do is to remember to stay in alignment with the all that is, so that we can be fully present to the all that is, and we can live our best lives with open hearts, with open minds. We can live our best lives, and we can release all that stuff that doesn't serve us. Release all the stuff that doesn't serve us, so that we can move forward, so that we can continue to move forward and continue to move forward and continue to move forward. We move ourselves in alignment with the freedom that is God, so that we can experience that freedom in our lives, so that we can experience that peace and that peace of mind that comes from forgiveness in our lives. And so that's what I'm inviting you to do today, that just move into a place of living in an atmosphere of forgiveness. That's what I like to do, think of forgiveness. That's how I like to think of forgiveness. Martin Luther King said that forgiveness should not be an occasional act. It should be a permanent attitude. It should not be an occasional act. It should be a permanent attitude. Not an occasional act, a permanent attitude. And for us, I say it has to be an atmosphere of forgiveness. We practice forgiveness so frequently. We practice forgiveness all the time. We practice forgiveness on a daily basis. We practice forgiveness on a moment-by-moment basis, so that our aura is one of forgiveness. Our aura is one of freedom. Our aura is one of letting go. We don't walk around holding grudges. We don't take issue with everything somebody says or does or doesn't do or doesn't say, or whatever the case may be. We just walk through life easily. We stay in the flow. We're able to go with the flow. And when we're going with the flow, we're going with God, because God is the flow. And so when we stay in that flow, when we stay in that place of the open heart, then we can walk through life and things happen and they just roll off us like water off a duck's back. That's what living in an atmosphere of forgiveness can do for us. We don't walk around heavy laden with the burden of resentment, the burden of grudges, the burden of all that stuff from the past. It doesn't serve us. And life is too short. Life is too short to walk around angry. Life is too short to walk around blaming. Life is too short to walk around finger pointing. Life is too short not to live it fully, not to live it in the big and, not to do the things that we want to do freely with an open heart and not be caught up with all the stuff that goes on in our heads about what somebody did or did not do, what somebody said or did not say, or whatever the case may be. So we want to use forgiveness as a survival technique. A survival technique. Because forgiveness is for you. I don't care what you think. It's really for you. It isn't for the other person. It's for you. It's for your freedom. It's for my freedom. It's to set us all free. And so if we want to be free, if we want to survive on this planet, forgiveness is our survival technique that we're going to use. And so I invite you to really consider forgiveness and consider our need for forgiveness, because we do need it so that we can live the life that we want to live, so that we can be in total alignment with the all that is. We cannot be in alignment with God. We cannot be at one with God when there's something blocking. We cannot feel the allness and the fullness of God when there's something blocking. Because there's something blocking. When our hearts are open, our hearts are open. But when it's closed, it's closed. If it's closed in one place, there's a block in another. If it's closed in one place, there's a block in another. And so just think about it. If you're thinking, I forgive everybody, but I can forgive anything, but it's the but that catches us. It's the but that hangs us up. It's the but that keeps our hearts closed. And so if you're thinking like that, like, I can forgive everything but that last little thing, well, that's the last little piece that you need to be working on. That's the last little piece that you need to be letting go. And if you've ever said, or if you're still saying, I can never forgive whoever for whatever. I can never forgive John for whatever. I can never forgive Susie for whatever. I can never forgive myself for doing that. How could I have? Those are the things that we have to just take a breath and say, you know what? I can forgive that. I can forgive that person. I am forgiving that person. I'm willing to forgive. And sometimes we have to get to willingness before we can get to forgiveness itself. Being willing, to be 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 willing. Sometimes we are that far away from forgiveness, depending on what the issue is, depending on who the person is. So just being in that place of saying, I forgive, sounds great. If you're not there, I'm willing to forgive. I'm willing to work on forgiveness. I'm willing to consider forgiveness. I'm willing to practice forgiveness every day. That's setting your intention that way, of being willing, is the thing that leads us to our healing. It leads us into oneness. It leads us into the open-heartedness that we have to experience in order to be at a place of at one with God. And so I'm inviting you to really think about that today, to really practice that as we move into this year, this new year that's coming up, as we release this 2018 year. Think about the things you want to let go, the grudges you want to let go, the resentments you want to let go, all the stuff that you want to let go of. And the third thing that creates a need for forgiveness would be the mistakes that we made, the mistakes that we have made, the mistakes we continue to make. Those create a need for forgiveness, self-forgiveness. Sometimes we're harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else. Sometimes it's harder to forgive ourselves than anybody or anything. Sometimes we get so caught up in guilt. We get so caught up in shame. We get so caught up in blaming ourselves. We get so caught up in judging ourselves that we don't even realize. It becomes second nature, that voice in our head that tells us how terrible we are, what a terrible thing we did, how awful, and all that stuff, that we don't even recognize it anymore as being a voice in our heads. We just think it's, whatever. It's just always there telling us how awful things are. And so when you get to the shame and the blame and all that stuff, that's a need for forgiveness, for self-forgiveness. And so I invite you to be willing to let that go in this year. Be willing to release that. Be willing to have your heart open. Be willing to really be in a place where you can live a life of joy. Because the deeper, the closer and deeper we are in spirit, the more joy we can experience in our lives. The further we are from forgiveness, the further we are from spirit. Because joy is of God. Joy is of God. And if we are not in a place where we can experience joy, if we're not in a place where we can experience spirit, the two go together. And so if we can't, because of our unforgiveness, if we cannot allow ourselves to be in a place where we can release and let go of things that we cannot change, release and let go of things we can. Just release and let go of those things that would block us. Those things, as I said, that would close our hearts. Those things that would make us hold a grudge. Those things that would make us stop speaking to somebody. And just forgiveness does not mean that you have to interact with the person. It doesn't mean you have to continue a relationship with them. It just means that you have to have an open heart when it comes to them. And so I'm going to invite you to let's turn within in this moment. Let's just take a moment to just take a breath. Just take a breath and turn within in this moment and bring to mind someone or some situation that you've really been holding on to this year. Just take a breath and just think about, bring to mind someone that you've been holding a grudge or anger or judgment against. Bring that person's face before you. Take a breath and just silently to yourself say, I forgive you. Take another breath and just say silently, I forgive you. I forgive you. For all the pain you caused me, whether intentionally or unintentionally, I forgive you. Whether you knew about it or not, I forgive you. So just take another breath now. Just let that person float away. And whatever the issue is that you were holding on to, let that float away for now. You can return and continue this process later, but for now, just let that go. And now take another breath and just call to mind something that you need to be forgiven for. Someone who needs to forgive you, someone you'd like to have forgive you. Call that person before you and just silently to yourself say, please forgive me. Please forgive me. That person could be living on this plane or on the other side. It doesn't matter. Forgiveness is, life is. Please forgive me for whatever it is you're in need of forgiveness for. Just ask forgiveness for that. Take a breath. And now just call to mind anything that you're holding against yourself, anything that you're holding against yourself, something you're blaming yourself for, something you are regretting, maybe something you said, something you did, something you didn't do, something you're judging yourself for, something you've been feeling shame about. Take a breath and just focus into your own heart, into your own being, and silently call yourself by name and say, I forgive you. I forgive you. Forgive yourself. I forgive you for pain you've caused. You're talking to yourself. I forgive you. Whether pain was intentional or unintentional, known or unknown, I forgive you. And so just take a breath now as you just let all this stuff go. And allow yourself to hang out in that place of letting go. This is what you want to do on a daily basis. Just breathe in and breathe out and practice forgiveness every day. I'm going to ask the ushers to come forward and do a reverse offering. And in their baskets, they have these little white stones. Take one when the basket comes by you. Take it home with you. Keep it with you. And let this serve as a reminder of your commitment to practice forgiveness every day. Take the stone in your hand, hold it in the palm of your left hand. Breathe as you're doing this. Stay in that meditative state as they're passing out the stones now. Keep breathing. Take a stone and keep passing the basket. Hold it in your left hand. Know that this is your stone of forgiveness. You can place it to your heart. This is your stone of release and letting go. This is your symbol of forgiveness. This is your symbol of releasing the stuff that doesn't serve. This is your symbol of really hanging out in that place of letting go. And so when everyone has a stone now, just repeat after me. I make this sacred commitment to practice forgiveness every day. I let this stone serve as a reminder to practice forgiveness every day. I set my intention to practice forgiveness every day, and to live in an atmosphere of forgiveness. I live my life in an atmosphere of forgiveness forever and ever and ever. Breathe that in. Take this stone with you. Put it in a place where you can see it and serve as a reminder of your sacred commitment to practice forgiveness every day, to release and let go every day. And we move into prayer now, just recognizing the power and the presence of God that is right here, right now, right where we are. The only power, the only presence, the only mind, the only life, the only breath is God. That breath breathes us each and every moment of each and every day. And so just knowing that this onlyness is my very life. This onlyness is the life of each of us here this day. I speak a special word of blessing for each of us this day, a word of forgiveness, a word of letting go, a word of releasing the stuff that doesn't serve, all the stuff we may have been holding on to from this past year and beyond. We let it go. We allow our hearts to open, and as we release and let go of the blame and the shame and the guilt and the resentment and the judgment and the anger and all that stuff, our hearts are open. Our hearts are free, free to love. We have peace and peace of mind. We experience connection. We experience the allness and the fullness of God as we continue to let go. And we allow this little white stone to remind us that forgiveness is ever available, is ever present. And it reminds us of our sacred commitment to practice forgiveness on a daily basis, on a moment-by-moment basis. And that is what we do here. That is what we do in our lives, so that we experience the allness and the fullness of life. I know that we are blessed and we are blessings as we do so. As a circle of prayer is open, I speak a special word of blessing for Sandy Gibbons this day. Just knowing that as he has shaken off the mortal coil, he moves on in his greater yet to be. Knowing that experiencing life and more life and love and more love, the love of God, the life of God that is right where he is. Knowing that eternal life exists. Life just is, whether it's on this side or the other. And so we bless Sandy on his way with love and more love and with light as he moves into the light easily and effortlessly. And with the grace of God completely surrounding him. I bless his family, knowing that right where they are, the power and the presence of God is blessing and keeping them. And that peace and peace of mind that passes human understanding is right where they are. It's lifting them up as this community lifts them up. I bless our community as we release and we let go with love and more love. Knowing that this love, pure love, is what Sandy is right now and what we experience right here, right now in this place. And so I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer this day. You may speak their names silently or aloud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. God is in the midst of everything, every situation, every circumstance, every life. God is in the midst of everything. God is in the midst of our community right here, right now, always blessing us, keeping us, lifting us up. This prayer goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day, just knowing that all indeed is well, for all indeed is God. Thank you, God, as we just continue to let go and let go and let go and let God. Thank you, infinite presence. Thank you, divine mother. I'll just allow it to be. And so it is.